Okay, we get to the final segment of my interview with Geoff Thompson. This has been great. The feedback's been amazing. This close to this, I think you're going to really, really get an awful lot out of. Geoff is probably one of the most thoughtful guys when it comes to this subject. And he's put an awful lot of time in to doing this and also making himself a better person. And some of the texts that he shares on here, believe it or not, I've delved into and I have really, really got a lot out of. There's just understanding violence is not enough. You really have to understand human nature. And Geoff really has taken a deep dive and he's kind of transcended to that next level. But do not underestimate the value of what he's telling you from all of his years. Just because he's at this stage right now does not mean that he was not in the thick of it at all times. And again, he has a very calm demeanor now, and he is a very thoughtful person, but he earned that. And he earned that through situations that most of us would not want to have to live through. So please benefit from this. So without further ado, Geoff Thompson. What's amazing about your journey, Geoff, is that it started with probably some of the most horrible distrust and betrayal you could ever think of. And that fostered your search to deal with these demons. I don't believe you could have got there in the most profound way that you have without having to have that violent reckoning with your demons and get that out. And I mean, I truly mean the violence. I mean, working that door and what you had to counter. And as you said, it's not like it was the most well-known place. That's how powerful the message is that you're internationally, known. People, anybody I know in the industry, your name always comes up as resonating with people because of the message. And yes, the prowess that they learn, they usually they seek your information usually for, the practical aspects of dealing in a violent situation, which they find very good. But then there's just that next level that's there. And that I think it's so healing for people. I mean, you didn't have the resources that the kids today have now. I mean, there's lots of outlets for people that are coming back that have experienced violence. There's a lot for sexual, survivors of sexual assault. I deal with women and men all the time, and it's amazing. It is as horrific as that is. It's amazing the people that have faced it, overcome it. They've achieved some. I mean, unfortunately, some of my best friends that are high achievers have had some sort of trauma like that drove them to not live like that the rest of their life, to not let that own them. And it's just
a very
amazing.
powerful catalyst.
Yeah.
And it's also a very powerful energy source, because don't forget, if that parasite is in you, that's an energy source. If you take away the labels, it's just a ball of energy. Right. If we can contain that and control it, we can throw our pail into that. We can draw out that oil. There's a lot of energy there. So it's a matter of subjugating these things rather than trying to be in denial about them. It's subjugating in the sense of seeing them, having the courage to face them, and then using them. In the Old Testament, they would call it the burnt offering or the animal sacrifice. It's an allegory. It means we burn the animal soul. We use it as fuel. So for me to do an interview like this, I need energy, and I will draw from wherever the energy is. When I learned to face my demons and look at them, and I'm talking literally again, demonic energies, demonic thought forms, or parasitical thought forms, whatever you want to call them, pain bodies, when I was able to see them and recognize that they were hoarding out in my body, feeding off my body, they were higher on the food chain than me, and they were invisible to me. Once I recognized them, I would make my body inhospitable for them so that they had to come out. So I went through a period of individuation where I brought all that unconscious stuff out into consciousness. That's why I've been able to produce 50 books, 15 award-winning films, stage plays, musicals, thousands of articles, not despite that, but because of it. That's my energy source. So I've been able to use that and burn that up in the volition. When you're doing that kind of work, you need an energy source. And it's there when you come to sit down and do the book and you have massive opposition. There's all sorts of fears raise their head. And you go, opposition, that's a good sign. That's all the parts of you that don't want to be burnt up in the transition of creation or in the arc of creation. So I learned to use those energies. I learned to see them as a gift. Obviously, I had to respect them, and I had to have enough control of my own will not to let them overrun me. This is what Carl Jung said. There's always a danger when you're going through individuation, when you're bringing up unconscious things. There's a danger that they are so potent that you engage them and they incarnate you and pull you back into the unconscious. So it's like being on a nightclub door again, but you're fighting an empty jacket.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, it's not right in front of you, but you can feel it. So a great book to get for this, if anybody's out there listening now, in fact, it's probably the best book in the world at the moment for this technique, is Eckhart Tolle's book, The Power of Now. And it is a technique for exorcising or subjugating negative energy forms that are in your body. His technique is thousands and thousands of years old. He's seen as a popular guru, but I would say that he's probably the mystic of our age, because he goes straight to the technique. He's the equivalent of someone like me who goes onto a nightclub door and says, this is what works. I can get rid of 10,000 techniques and I can go through hundreds of fights on a right cross as long as I'm preemptive, as long as I can read the situation. Everything else is support system. That's what he's done. He's found the esoteric technique for observing these energy forms and creating space in between them so that he can dissolve them. So if anyone's out there now, have a look at Eckhart Tolle. He does a lot of free stuff online that people can look at. And he's a very gentle guy, but his arcana, his secrets came from his own personal breakdown. You know, he was a suicidal, he didn't want to live. And he just had this moment of clarity. And he's managed to isolate all of the different teachings into this one technique. It's really, really worth looking at if anyone's out there listening now.
Hey, Geoff, I wanted to also, because our prior conversation, something really stuck with me. And I think it's really relevant for kids right now that are listeners and adult and not adults, but, you know, older people are names, because we live in such an instantaneous world right now where if we're going to look for information, we Google it and the first 10 sources are all we ever see. The one thing I thought was really interesting in my last conversation with you when we were talking about your deep dive into the older texts was even the ones that are popular, you know, we all found like Bhagavad Gita. And so like you delve into that and then you'd find the original source materials beyond that. And so I just would like to encourage people to take deeper dives into this, because what you found was these are very, very principle-based ancient methods that, you know, come up to books today, you know, whoever the popular guru is or whatever will touch on parts of it, but the actual original sources, you've done such a deep dive into that. And that was such a powerful part of the conversation that I had with you last time that I actually, it drove me to, you know, go a little bit deeper in my researches. Yeah,
well, it's there. That's the thing. What happens with religion is that people there is a house ghost. There are natural energies around us, negative energies that don't want kids like us to look at the Gita or the Old Testament or the New Testament, because they know there is arcana there. They know the secrets, and those secrets will help us to combat and dissolve these negative energies. So there will be lots of opposition. So they call them house ghosts. There'll be things that will go, oh, well, I'm not going to look at that book because religion is, you know, it's responsible for all the wars. But they don't qualify that. It's just something they've heard. I'm not going to look at that book, you know, because I don't believe in religion. But they don't really know why they don't believe in it. So there's the hidden book. There's the revealed books, which is what you see on the shelf. And then there are the hidden books. And that's the books beyond the books. So you can pick up the Old Testament, which they say is the blueprint to the universe. The 5 books of Moses, or they call it the Pentateuch. And you can look at that and think, yeah, I've heard about this so much, but you know, it's just old. It's just old. And it's like, there's nothing relevant there. It's not didactic. But if you look at someone like Viktor Frankl, one page of the Torah, one page of the Old Testament took him through Auschwitz. In fact, at one point, the page was taken off him and he heard this angelic voice say to him, we don't want you to read the Torah anymore. We want you to be the Torah. In other words, be the message, be the word, be the power. And he was able to work that metaphysically in one of the most horrendous places in history on earth. He was able to transcend the human realm and go into all sorts of different places, avoid death often by seconds and by yards. And he was able to get through that whole 5 years or 4 years in Auschwitz unscathed because of what he'd learned from the Torah. But beyond the book, he had to go into the actual doing of it. And he became this amazing teacher. He developed a system called logotherapy. And logos means, it literally in the Old Testament, it means the word or the Christ or the purpose. So he taught people to transcend their pain by finding a purpose behind it. And they said he was so revered that some of the massive gurus we've got around today, their claim to fame was that they stood on the stage with Viktor Frankl. He did a book called Man's Search for Meaning. It's one of the most profound books you'll ever read, and it tells you the power of biblical text. So you go into the Torah, but the mystical arm of the Torah is the Kabbalah. So that's kind of like the commentary on the Torah, the esoteric commentary. But beyond that, you've got the Zohar. And the Zohar is 24 volumes, which is the exegesis of Kabbalah. In other words, the explanation of the explanation. And this work is so esoteric that when you go into it, it says at the beginning, this is a study, you won't understand it. It's esoteric. There is something in here for you. Your soul will read it like a barcode, but you won't understand it. That will shatter your ego, because your ego will want to understand it. It'll want to control it. It'll want to quote it, but it won't be able to. It won't understand it. So you have to have the discipline, the control of will to sit down and read this work, make notes as you go. So I read the Zohar over 6 months, full time. I took 70 pages of notes, and I did notes on the notes, and I did notes on the notes on the notes. And the notes that I took down were just things that jumped out of the page at me. And I was able to reduce that right down to something that was a specific message just for me, not for Tim Larkin, not for Joe Blogs or anybody else. Right. There was stuff I found in there that would make no sense to anybody else, but was, to me, was transformative. It was a seed it gave me, and this seed, this tiny seed, one word, was like the seed of an acorn. If I plant it in fertile soil, if I plant it in my mind and start to develop it and start to unfold it and start to study it, that one acorn has the potential to grow for 500 years and grow 200 feet tall. And it has the ability to create another million seeds of its kind. So that one acorn can produce, that one seed of wisdom can produce another million. And each of those million can produce another million ad infinitum. So when you go into the exegesis of the books, same with the Hindu texts, the same with the Sikh texts, the same with the Christian texts, when you start to go into the explanation and into the exegesis, it's never ending. And in the end, it's not giving you a pithy verse or a little bit of a sugar high. Oh, that feels like me. It's not doing that. It's demanding that you subjugate the ego, get it out of the way. You go through a period of kenosis where you empty yourself and you just take in this new information that makes no fucking sense at all. No sense. And the ego is screaming. I sat down for every day for like a job, full-time hours, and every single reading, my ego was screaming to stop. Just don't want to do this. What we're doing, this makes no sense. I have the discipline because of my martial arts training to sit down and make myself do things. I have control of the will. So I use the arm of the soul, which is the will, to sit down and expand my intellectual or conscious understanding by imbibing this material. Like I said, it's transformative, and the seed it gave me is going to be my work now for however long, because I'm still unfolding it. So, but that's there for anybody. That information is there for anybody, but you've got to get past the house ghost, because the house ghost will say, there's nothing in this for us. Religion's rubbish. Religion's dogmatic.
Hey, everybody. Hey, if you're enjoying this content, please take the time to go to surviveviolence.com, give us your email, allow us to send you and give you a free masterclass on how to deal with the subjects that we talk about on this channel. Also, please join the channel, hit the subscribe button, notification button, and please share this with all your friends.
And there's nothing like what people imagined it to be. I mean, religion just really means alignment. It comes from the word religare. It means to align to something. So it means man aligns to man, man aligns to his source. So when I'm religious, I just align to my source. A bit like plugging if I plug a radio into the wall, I'm religious. I'm aligning the radio to a power source. So with the Bhagavad Gita, it's the same. Bhagavad Gita, you read it and you think you've done well because you've read this ancient text, 5,000 years old, and you realize the Gita is just one chapter in the Mahabharata.
Right.
You go, fucking hell. So I'll pick the Mahabharata up. My eyes are bleeding by the time I finish reading it because it's so dense. But it's exciting. And I go, well, look at me. I've done it. I've read the Mahabharata. I get to the end of the Mahabharata and it says, this is just one chapter in the Srimad Bhagavatam. I go, fucking hell, I better get the Bhagavatam then. So my children buy me the Bhagavatam, and the Bhagavatam is 15 volumes. So I read the Bhagavatam, I think, well, I really have done it now. It's 34,000 verses. And I get to the end of the Bhagavatam and it says, this is just the fruits of the Vedas, which are 500,000 verses long. So in other words, your potential to grow is infinite. Your potential to understand is infinite. And I didn't just stop at those. Those books also led me into the Yoga Vasishta, which nearly popped my head, because it was the Hindu version of the multiverse. And it really, really does make your head go funny. You can only take a bit at a time. But so beautiful and so challenging. When I read the Zohar, Tim, there was some days, honestly, if I read over my quota every day, I literally felt like I might go insane. I felt like I was falling into a psychosis because it was so rich. Even though I didn't understand it, it was so rich. I had to really draw myself into the center and sit there until it settled. People think that the door is challenging. People think that going to war is challenging. And of course, within that realm it is. But when you go in, it's another level of challenge.
Yeah.
And that's why I would really encourage people out there who are in any kind of crisis to turn towards this stuff. Because not only will it take you away from where you've been, it'll also expand you. You know, it'll show you your potential.
I think one of the best messages that you just gave people too, and I hope everybody heard that, is I think people avoid stuff like that. You know, when a deep dive into something that really they could read and not understand, and don't understand that there's other benefits to it. It's absorbing into you. It's not, yes, consciously, you probably are very confused and you think you just wasted your time, but it's over time letting that just bathe in you that it comes out. And people just, if they trust the process. I remember when I got into meditation, you know, I kept thinking I was doing it wrong. You know, I kept thinking, and when you realize, no, your mind's going to empty out, and let that happen. Let it go. Let it get to that point. And I guess, you know, the other aspect of it, of doing this work that I think is so important, is let's talk about what happens if you don't do this work. Now, listen, you had a lot of friends, you said, you know, got murdered, drug overdoses, things like that. Can you talk to because we do have a lot of people that work in violent professions, and they're in there and they get, you know, they get to a certain stage. I know I have a lot of friends. I have a lot of it's not fair to say violent. They are violent. They are violent people. I get along very well with people like that. I learn a lot from them. They've taught me more than anything else. They don't suffer fools, and they're there. But I also would see the toll that it took on them, you know, especially as they got older. And could you just speak a little bit to that? Because you were able to, you're one of the rare people that was able to pull yourself out of that, because nobody was more immersed in it than you were. And you're right. And you've turned it into such a positive message. But I'm worried about those people that are afraid to do this type of work. They're going to give every excuse. I'm not smart enough. I don't like reading. I don't like this. I don't like that. But what's the price of living with that, with unresolved, demons, basically?
Well, I've been lucky enough to have had visions of demonic forces, and I've had visions of the soul, and I've had visions of what violence does to the soul. Any kind of pornography, and according to the Buddhists, anything outside of homeostasis or natural balance is pornographic, it's excessive. So I've because of my deep dive into the Buddha, I've had visions of the soul. I've had visions of what violence does to the soul, of how it's torturous to the soul. And I've also had visions of what happens in the body. People think that violence is okay. They think that they're doing a good job. They think they're protecting the good majority from the bad minority, but they're just part of the mayhem. They're just part of the violence that feeds violence. So if we're in a world of violence, we're feeding parasites inside us. If we don't recognize there are parasites inside us, then we haven't got our own will. We haven't got control of our will. We haven't got control of our own kingdom. So this is what we said before about about Odysseus coming back from the Trojan Wars, recognizing it's like the allegory of waking up and recognizing that I'm awake, but I haven't got control of this body. I can't stop myself from thinking violent thoughts. I can't stop myself from accessing violent pornography. I can't stop myself from accessing sexual pornography. I think their choice is, but if I try and stop it, I can't. I can't stop myself from drinking alcohol. I can't stop myself from eating too much. So it's not what I'm taking in that's the worry. It's what I'm feeding. What I recognized was that, and this only happened because I hit a crisis. I'd nearly killed a few people. And this one particular night, I was certain I had. I remember knocking him out. I remember that I was trying to go into Buddha. I was trying to be more peaceful. I was trying to get away from violence. And this one particular night, I think I was being too polite with this guy, to cut a long story short, he started to try to bully me where I was working as a doorman. So I recognized what he was doing, and I said to him, I kind of had a word with him, and he was really offended, and he wanted to go outside and have a match fight with me. So I went outside with him, and he was a black belt himself. This was outside a pub, but it was a black belt, but he wasn't equipped for what we were doing out there, and I absolutely destroyed him. When he was unconscious, someone picked him up to try and move him, and I booted him in the head again when he was unconscious. If he was coming round, he was out again. And I can remember there was lots of witnesses, and I can remember that I had no control over this. I just did it. And I felt my life ebbing away, because as they were dragging him up to the car, under his arms, belly down, toes, shoes scuffing on the floor, right. Someone said, he's dead. And I believed he was dead. And I went home, and as I drove my car home, it was like the veil had dropped. It was just, I could see the beauty of the universe. And it felt like I was losing everything, but I could see the beauty. The lights outside the car were shimmering. Everything was glowing. Everything felt like it was breathing. I got back to my house. My wife was in bed. My kids were in bed. And I knelt down by my wife, and fucking hell, she was so beautiful. It's not like I didn't appreciate it, but this was another level. I just couldn't believe. She was glowing. She was warm. It was just like there was something otherworldly about her. I went into my kids, and they were all asleep, and I kissed them. And I remember thinking, I'm losing all this. My liberty, my freedom in the world felt like this precious treasure. And I was losing it because some guy fucking insulted me in a nightclub, and I battered him. Right. So I was in an immediate crisis, because I suddenly had a vision of reality. And I got down on my knees, and I found the God that I'd forgotten. And I said, look, if you let this guy live, I promise you I will turn this around. So I didn't go there out of curiosity or out of, just like interest. I went there because I was afraid, was very afraid. I was afraid of what I'd done because I had an innate understanding of spirituality. I knew that I wasn't just threatening my liberty in the world, I was threatening my place in the hereafter. This is a reciprocal universe. There is a consequence to everything. Nobody escapes the consequence of their actions. So it was a long, long night. The next day, I felt ill. I felt sick. Everything on the television that was remotely violent, it was like all the layers had gone, all the armor had gone. And I just felt it like a direct assault on my soul. And I eventually plucked up the courage to ring up the pub that I was working on. And I said, look, have you heard? Is he okay? Did he die? And they said, we've seen him walking around. He's okay. So that was it. That was when I started to turn it around. And that was the beginning of my Budo training. But it came from a place of extreme crisis. The fear I felt, the terror I felt was disproportionate to the situation, which is always a sign of spiritual shock. When the terror you feel is greater than the situation you're in, it's always a sign of a spiritual shock. So I started to turn it around. Then I started to work on the Budo. I started to move away from the doors. And as I moved away from the doors, the clubs closed, the pubs closed, and that infrastructure that I built up disappeared. Many of the monsters that I'd created suddenly fell away. And I started to teach. The kind of stuff I'm teaching now. And suddenly I was surrounded by, it was like these powerful, what Freud would call the angelic realm. I felt energies from the angelic realm saying, well, Geoff Thompson's come back into alignment. Let's send him teachers. And I suddenly started to get visible teachers, invisible teachers, books, as much as I could take in, it was coming to me. And as I was reading it, I was writing it, I was teaching it. So I was, it's what the Buddha would call the three jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha. So the teaching, the teacher, and the community. So my teaching, my teacher, and my community was all Budo. Everything I did, I started to let go of all the weapons. I started to let go of the physical body armor. So I went down from about 16 stone to about 11 stone. So I contracted physically, but expanded in consciousness. And I just couldn't believe how much material was there. And I was extremely violent. I literally battered people because I was so insecure. Anybody that stepped over the line, they got it. But these forces were welcoming me because I was like the prodigal son. So even though I was very violent, they were welcoming me. I was going to be a good teacher. I was going to be the teacher that stands in front of people and say, I understand you. I go to prisons and I talk to kids and I go, I understand you. Yeah. You're like me. Look, I'm covered in war paint. Look at my back. It's like wings. I've got body armor everywhere. Look at my face. Got a face like 10 boxes. I'm like a fucking Sherman tank. I'm like you, but I'm telling you that there's a bigger place than this. This is just a grain of sand on the beach. There is a much bigger place in the Budo. And then you start to recognize, like I said, that people like Masashi came before you. People like Ushiba came before you. People like Kano, they came before you. They found exactly the same path. So it's very powerful and very exciting. But I recognize that the violence wasn't just corrosive to me. It was corrosive to everybody I touched. It was corrosive to my wife. My friends were afraid of me, right, because I was so volatile. I was horrified when I found out my friends were afraid of me. I was a bully. I was a fascist in my own house. If my wife didn't want sex, Tim, if she didn't fancy a cuddle, I would slam doors and be moody and give her a cold back in bed. What is that? That's just bullying. I didn't even know I was doing it. If I raised my voice, my wife would be afraid. And I'm thinking, I love this girl's bones and she was afraid of me. My best friends were afraid of me. Everybody was afraid of me. I thought they all loved me, but they was just afraid of me. So this violence was so corrosive. It was creating an aura around me, like a fog that was touching everything around me. I've said to my wife once, isn't this city violent? Everywhere I go, there's violence. And she said to me, Geoff, there's a common denominator. It's everywhere you go.
Right.
And I took it with me.
That's great.
I could be at a wedding.
She's a smart
At
woman.
a wedding and get in a fight. I was in fights at funerals. I headbutted a guy and knocked him down a flight of stairs at a christening. And everyone applauded me and bought me beers. There was beers on the bar like winners' cups. But you didn't get invited back many times because they were afraid that you might turn on them.
Right.
Because my violence came from this insecure place. So I realized how corrosive it was to everybody, especially to the people I loved. You know, if I was the one that was breaking boundaries, I was teaching them by example to live a violent and a criminal life. Because it's not like you just open the door to violence and that's it. When I opened the door to violence, I opened the door to all vice. You let in one demon, you let them all in. Right. You know, I was dabbling with crime. I was dabbling with, you know, protection, you know, going and helping, you know, going and protecting criminals, you know, being a bodyguard for criminals when they were doing some of their work. I was buying and selling bent gear, and my intelligence was so small, I just rationalized it. I couldn't see it. So as I started to expand, I saw the folly of that. I understood the law, I understood the world, I understood causality, you know, the law of compensation. That was good because it meant if I did the wrong thing, wrong things would come back. But if I did good things, I could build up credit and good things would come back. So I started to think, I don't want people to be afraid of me. I don't want anybody to leave the room without feeling like they can't change the world, because I know it's possible. I want to show them by my example that potential is infinite. But in order to expand, we have to first contract. We have to contract and get rid of the violence. We have to get rid of the vice. We have to get rid of the pornographies. They're parasites. We let them across the threshold like vampires. You know the allegory of the vampire. It can't enter your house unless you invite it across the threshold. It's just an allegory of this food chain that's higher above us, these parasites that feed off us. They feed off us when we're violent. They feed off us when we're excessive. They feed off us when we're angry. They feed off rage particularly. They feed off sexual pornography. That's like a delicacy to it. We let them across the threshold. They let us think that we're in charge, but actually we've just been overrun. The subtle thing about these parasites is that once they're embedded, they think they're you. And worse than that, you think they're you. You don't think, you do something you shouldn't have done. You just think, I was having a bad day. I wasn't myself. It's not like me. I was out of character, because you think it's you, but it's actually these parasites working through you. This is a big thing I learned about violence, was that violence feeds violence. You don't get rid of black by adding black. So it's massively corrosive. But the good news is, if you've lived a life like that, there's more potential for you to ascend than anybody else. It's a tough path. But I can only say, if you've stood on a nightclub door, if you've been to war, you know how to deal with that. You'll be fine. If you can do the external fight, then you just have to change your perception, your tactics a little bit. You can do the internal fight, what they call the greater jihad. So all those people out there who are told there's no hope for you, there's no potential for you, they've got more potential than anybody else. But you have to get rid of one thing if you want to bring in another.
You know, Geoff, I think I want to be respectful of your time. I think that's a perfect place for us to end the interview. That message is, I can't think of anything more powerful.
Thank you.
The one thing I would say is I want, and I'll say this in my intros and stuff. I hope people take advantage of this. I hope people take advantage of this interview and take advantage of the fact that you are still among us. And I don't mean that lightly. Very few people, we read about Musashi, we read people like that. They're rare individuals that can do this, and you can provide a lot of help to people if they just seek it out. And it's a very interesting perspective, because the depths you had to go, nobody's going to be able to compete with that. It's hard when people try to talk this at this level, but they haven't experienced anything. They haven't they've only been in the books, they've only studied the scriptures, but they haven't actually, lived life basically, and seeing the worst of it. I mean, it's a rare thing that I think there's a lot of people that need this type of a message right now. And I'm hoping I can get this distributed to some people that need it very quickly.
That's great.
But
that's
I
where
can't,
people like us come in, because we have experienced things at the coal face. We're the perfect people to pass the message on, because we can say, well, I've been down there.
yeah.
I know what happens down. I know how that works. We don't judge people because we've been there ourselves.
Well,
we can show them that the way out. That's
the interesting part, is that you can look at somebody like that and say, no, you're wrong. There's tons of hope, tons of potential for you. You just have to redirect those efforts, and you got to. And it's hard. The hardest thing for people to do is redirect inward. And I think you very eloquently and very bravely, discuss that. Very few people are willing to discuss this type of stuff, and I love the fact that you are out sharing this message with people, and I hope people take advantage of it, because it's a powerful message.
Thank you, Tim. I appreciate it.
All the best, my friend.
Good to speak to you.
Okay, that wraps up the complete series for this piece of content. I hope you really enjoyed it. And listen, don't forget, go to surviveviolence.com, give us your email address, get your free masterclass, send your friends there. Also, share this channel with people. I hope you subscribe. Please subscribe, hit the notification bells. But more importantly, if there's a piece of content that really resonated with you, get it out to your friends. That's how this channel will grow. And I can't thank you enough for all the help so far. But we'll be coming up with some new content very soon. And thank you for this series.